seeing children, I have my own kids. There's a very fine line between over-pathologizing, over-diagnosing, and really seeing what's going on, and then treating it appropriately, not over-medicating, but to really guide them. You see, the goal with kids is to stack the chips in their favor, not alter their life by giving them a ton of meds, and sometimes they need medication, but stack the chips in their favor. Get them the right therapy to work through whatever it is that they're going through. Teach them about, let them get some insight into who they are and identity. And at the same time, if they're having behavioral problems, maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's bipolar, maybe it's mood lability, that's affecting their life negatively because they're not doing good at school, they're not doing good with friends, maybe a little bit of medicine will help that.
All right, Dr. Sportelli, if somebody has a loved one who they believe have bipolar disorder, who is somebody that they can go to help them through this process?
The family members?
Yes.
All right, so family members of bipolar individuals absolutely, positively have to be involved in the care. I encourage it tremendously because you can be this guidance and support for this person and make their prognosis much better. So that being said, I encourage family members to be involved and to be part of the care, okay? So where can family members go? First of all, if the person is seeing a doctor or a therapist and they have that established already, I would ask the individual if they can come along, if they can be part of the therapeutic alliance as a family member, as a loved one, as a spouse. Just be part of it. You don't have to sit in on the sessions, but at least be a part of it. I encourage when a patient first goes to a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist that has bipolar disorder to sign that piece of paper that allows family to be involved. When you're in a good state of mind, that's a great time to sign that piece of paper because when you're manic or severely depressed, you need family involved. And if you don't have that HIPAA release, then it limits the doctor or the therapist or the clinician. It limits access to family members because you can't talk to the family members. So I encourage the patients to allow their family to be involved in their care. So as far as information goes, MedCircle's amazing, right? So you come to MedCircle and find out all this information. But I encourage families to get involved in support groups as well, right? Local support groups. And number one, I think call your local hospital and find out what the behavioral health care services they have available at that particular hospital and see how you can get involved, right? That's at the local level. The other thing is when you go with the individual to their therapy sessions or their psychiatry sessions, talk to the therapist, the psychiatrist, how can I get more involved? What resources are available? I like NAMI, N-A-M-I, National Alliance for Mental Illness. They have support groups. They have, I just had a patient whose mother got involved in this incredible, she did it like a weekend thing that they had that NAMI sponsored, was how to be an advocate for a patient with bipolar disorder. So they have things like that. So where do they go right off the bat? If this is a new diagnosis, I think the first thing you need to do is see what you have in your community. And unfortunately, in behavioral health, it is so diverse. If you're on the East Coast or the West Coast or the Midwest, you may not have providers as readily accessible as certain areas. So there's a crisis right now. There's a crisis with a lack of providers, and there's a crisis with an increase in behavioral health issues. So this is a very challenging topic. My recommendation would be to contact your local hospital and find out the behavioral health resources in the community. I would also call the behavioral health line on the back of your insurance card and get the names of people. I would look at NAMI, NAMI, just to be supportive and get as much information as you can about what is specific to your community.
How critical is early intervention for bipolar disorder?
Incredibly critical.
Okay.
It's incredibly critical because this is a specific illness that we know undoubtedly has a worse prognosis if you don't intervene early. Listen to this. A person with bipolar disorder has a 1 in 10 chance of committing suicide and succeeding, right? 1 out of every 10 people with bipolar disorder will die by suicide. That's a crisis. That is an emergency. Okay, think about that for a second. The other statistics that's incredibly troubling is 1 in 3 will attempt suicide.
Wow.
1 in 3 will attempt, 1 in 10 will die by suicide.
Okay, so I want to do something a little off the cuff here. The founder of MedCircle, Doug Colbeth, has bipolar disorder. He has become one of the largest philanthropists when it comes to mental health. MedCircle is his third business. The first two he took public. They're worth billions of dollars each. And he created the Colbeth Clinic in Chicago to help underserved youth for mental illness, and now MedCircle to provide this education to millions. He's here, and I don't know if he wants to do this, but it's silly for me as someone who doesn't have bipolar disorder to sit here and talk about it when we have somebody who is very open, who has been very open about it. So can we get him mic'd up? And I can just squeeze out, because there are things that he can share that I can't. Sorry to do this to you. But I'm not that sorry either.
All right, Doc, first of all, I want to thank you again, having you come meet with us. It's fantastic. One of the reasons I was very interested in starting MedCircle was, quite frankly, personal. I was diagnosed bipolar at the ripe old age of 37. And it was late. It was way too late. And people always say to me, oh my God, what was your childhood like? What was your adolescence like? What was your, college years like? What was your early years as a young married fellow with a beautiful daughter and then a beautiful son? And my life was out of control till really about 37 years old. And the reason I want to talk a little bit about it is I think I want to help not just the bipolar person who is experiencing all these horrific things. Let's not forget about all the loved ones around them who have experienced a lot of pain. I'm not proud to say that I probably hurt a lot of people for many years. And to me, that's as much motivation for MedCircle as it is helping people who deal with bipolar. And as a very young child, I did these incredible acts of aggression that got passed off as he's a football player. And these were very aggressive acts, and nobody knew what to do with it. Mental health was not allowed to be discussed in my house. Then it got into teenage years, and he's aggressive. And it was always passed off as aggressive. And then later in my teens, I think the way I wanted to deal with everything was really drugs and alcohol. Because I wanted to slow this racing mind. My mind always felt like I was in a NASCAR race zooming around the back wall, and I just wanted something to slow it down. So I started enormous drug use, including cocaine and alcohol. And, was I functioning? Sorta. But then I would have these horrendous periods of just disappearing. And that all went on till about 37 years old. And around that time, I was diagnosed by a family friend. Essentially, it was a doctor I had met. And he was the one who noticed some of this behavior. And he took me through a wonderful process, just like you would. And I bought into it. And I said, I think you're onto something. And I don't want to live this chaotic life, absolutely chaotic life. I also, just prior to that, went through a very depressed period where I felt all I'm doing is hurting people. There's total chaos. It would be best for everyone if I left the earth. And I was in the middle of planning that. And I thought, some people would be disappointed. Some might not be, but I wanted to get better. But on the plus side, after I got treated and I was diagnosed bipolar 2, things got better. I was able to start a business. The business did really well. And when we sold the first business, it was called Spyglass. A lot of people might know the name. It was one of the early technology companies in the internet. I said, we got to help people. We've got to help families. We've got to help patients. We've got to get earlier intervention with bipolar, because the signs were there when I was 12 or 13. They were there. And so that early intervention, I think, can really change lives, not just of the patient, but also those loved ones that want to support someone with this disorder. And then last but not least, and we could do a whole nother segment on addiction, but it really helped my ability to deal with my addiction issues when I was effectively treated for bipolar. You deal with children, and there's nothing more precious in the world. And as a parent, and you're also a parent, that early intervention, you know, say, and at the Colbert Clinic, we even see kids as young as 6, right? But around 12, 13 years old, you know, is when you could really see it. And I think it could have been diagnosed, and so many lives would have been improved for almost 25 years. And we want to make sure, and MedCircle wants to make sure, that we can get this content out and this information out. So talk a little bit about, you know, how you look for symptoms in a child that age, and how you not only diagnose that, but how you talk to the loved one, which is typically a parent.
Right. Well, first, honestly, Doug, I just have to acknowledge everything that you're saying, and what you're doing here is so profound. And I tell people, I use this phrase a lot, I'm in the trenches of behavioral health. I'm on the front lines of this, Doug. In the emergency department, on the consultation service, in the medical hospital, on the inpatient psychiatric units, and I see the crisis. I see what you're describing. I see it on the child units when I cover the child units. I see the desperate parents. I see the lack of care, the lack of access. Everything that you're saying here, it resonates with me. And honestly, the world is lucky to have you, because you've experienced this firsthand. And that's what it takes with mental illness sometimes, because you know it, you've lived it, and you know how devastating it can be, and you know how easy it can be overlooked, and how devastating that can be. You've lived it.
Oh, people made excuses for me.
Of course. But listen, and you're touching on so many important things. Like I said, we can talk about this as a full episode. The substance dependence was self-medication, right? And that can be completely devastating in and of itself. So let's look at early intervention. When you were 12 and you were agitated and you were angry, that's a red flag. Right? Now think about the excuse. He's just a tough kid. He wants to play football. He's just being a kid. If someone recognized that early, you see, in my opinion, you're lucky. You're lucky. You're lucky that it was diagnosed at 37, and you're lucky from the age of 12 to 37, you didn't fit that criteria of someone getting into an incredibly dangerous circumstance, being manic, you know, potentially hurting yourself, committing suicide, hurting someone else. God forbid. Overdose on substances. These are things I see every day. You're lucky that you made it to 37. And thank God there was a doctor that was keen enough to pick that up and potentially change your life at that point. But all of that being said, seeing children, I have my own kids. There's a very fine line between over-pathologizing, over-diagnosing, and really seeing what's going on, and then treating it appropriately, not over-medicating, but to really guide them. You see, the goal with kids is to stack the chips in their favor, not alter their life by giving them a ton of meds, and sometimes they need medication, but stack the chips in their favor. Get them the right therapy to work through whatever it is that they're going through. Teach them about, let them get some insight into who they are and identity. And at the same time, if they're having behavioral problems, maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's bipolar, maybe it's mood lability, that's affecting their life negatively because they're not doing good at school, they're not doing good with friends, maybe a little bit of medicine will help that. So they'll develop better peer relations. They'll develop better family relations. They're not as likely to use substances. And I want to tell you quickly, I started out as a family doctor. I went into psychiatry, and I did an adult psychiatry residency, and you know what I saw? We're not getting to them early enough. By the time I saw adults, And I don't want to say it's too late because it's never too late, but the illnesses have been established and they're chronic and a lot of the damage has been done.
Yeah.
And that's why I did a fellowship in child psychiatry, because I said, if we can get there early, because all the data points to that, if you can get in there early, you can make such a difference in the trajectory of their lives. So as parents, and it's a very broad question, what do you look for? You're monitoring your child and you know what is normal and what is not. If behavior doesn't seem right to you, it's not going to hurt to get an evaluation. If something doesn't seem right, if they're overly irritable or anxious or impulsive or agitated or breaking things or depressed and sullen and quiet or, anything that just raises red flags, and those are all red flags, call a therapist, have them evaluated. It's not going to hurt. It's going to take an hour of your time, and it might open the doors to something to change the trajectory of their life for the better. And there's so many fears of parents. There's a stigma. They're going to over-medicate my child. Don't forget, you're in charge of what's going on as an advocate for your child. If you see a doctor that suddenly wants to put your child on a boatload of stimulants, say no and see someone else.
Right.
It's okay.
Right.
That's okay. Yeah. Don't think that they're going to
we get second opinions on everything else.
Get second opinions.
So get a second.
Exactly. What's the difference? Right. You go to a doctor because you have headaches and you don't like what he's telling you. Right. You're going to see another neurologist. Right. Do the same thing with behavioral health. Yeah. Do the same thing. And educate yourself as a family member, as a parent, on the signs and symptoms of these things so you can look out for it. And that's what resources like this are so important for.
If you like psychology and learning about mental health and want to learn more while meeting other people who are interested, explore your membership options using the link below this video or visit medcircle.com.
Doc, I want to talk to you about something else. Since we focused on mental health a few months ago and had all this great viewership and subscribers and everything, I asked people to give me feedback. And a lot of the people have seen stuff where I've openly talked about my own bipolar, and they say, oh, that helped you build 2 businesses. I just want to make sure everybody is careful about this, because I get this question at cocktail parties and all these different events I go to. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that at the very beginning maybe of starting to feel in a higher energy period, I may have more ideas, but I don't encourage anyone to go start a business because they're bipolar. And what I tell them is, get great treatment. Take your time. Get the second opinion. Do the right thing. And if you still want to start a business, go ahead and do it. And but I just want people to know, and I don't know if you run into that very much, where a lot of the popular press talks about, oh, he's bipolar, that's why he's creative. Right. Or he's bipolar, he can work for 2 weeks without sleep, that's why his company's doing well. And I even had someone say to me, I'm going off my meds because I feel better when I'm manic. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because that's dangerous. And it
is dangerous, Doug. Now, true mania is destructive.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to realize. Now, there is a piece of mania that is euphoric.
Yeah.
There is a piece of mania that is productive. But when you look at it linearly and longitudinally, if people don't receive treatment, 9 times out of 10, it spirals out of control and becomes dangerous and detrimental in their life. It's very rare that mania is going to only be productive. And don't forget, the nature of bipolar illnesses is periods of mania, periods of potential depression, periods of euthymia. You know better than anyone as a successful businessman that it takes consistency. And if you're up and down and all over the place, if you have 2 weeks of mania, that is not going to make or break a business. No. You may get some good ideas. You may be a little bit more creative. You may think outside the box to generate some of this. But you know that a successful business is hard, consistent work and stable work. Yeah. Right? You're not going to create a successful business in a manic episode because likely your decision-making capacity is altered. Yeah. When you're impulsive, when you are grandiose, you are not thinking rationally for the most part, right?
Right.
So you're probably going to make some very poor decisions at some point.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's a myth. I think that, I'm an advocate of people in general. And I think anyone with a mental illness has just as much possibility to be successful as anyone else.
I agree.
Sometimes there are pieces of mental illness that make us eccentric and unique and maybe think outside the box, like I said. And you know what? That might be a positive. But to capitalize on a manic episode or to not take medicines and to not be compliant with treatment because you think that it's going to be beneficial to you is a mistake.
Right.
Because the negatives and the dangers greatly outweigh the potential rewards. That's important.
And one other message for all the viewers, because I have been on medication now for 35 years, and you can still be creative on medication.
Good point.
Right. And you get that consistency. Right. And it was a life changer for me. Life changer in so many ways. So effective treatment, you can do anything.
Yes.
But get the effective treatment first, and don't listen to the popular stories about go off your meds.
Yeah.
Stay compliant, but question everything along the line.
Be an educated patient. And that's what this is about.
And that's what MedCircle is all about. I believe that this type of education not only can create much better health outcomes sooner, you actually can save enormous treatment dollars because how many people are wrongly diagnosed to begin with because they went to the wrong provider first. When you go to the wrong provider, quite often it's a pediatrician or an internist or somebody, and then all of a sudden you get the wrong diagnosis, then the wrong treatment, and then you give up and you self-medicate, right? So it's a vicious cycle, and the purpose of MedCircle is to help everyone along those steps, a step-by-step process that will save enormous amounts of agony and just absolute horrific things for families. That's most important.
Yeah.
Second thing is, okay, we'll save a lot of dollars potentially on treatment, but that's second important. And then when all that happens, now you can be part of an army that goes out there, like these young folks that work for MedCircle. They're part of this army now that's going out to help other people. And we especially applaud you because we know you're part of that. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking with Doug. And I know the viewers will find that so compelling because here's some guy who has bipolar disorder and has created an amazing life for himself. And perhaps even more importantly, has created an amazing lives for so many other people through his charitable work. I mean, I'm not just saying this because he's in the room. I'm saying this, it's so nice to work for somebody who is about reaching millions of people and changing their lives for the better, which is
amazing. No, it's amazing. It's amazing to be part of it. And I want to say something that I just want to add to that part of this goal and part of this drive with MedCircle, what I want to say is one thing, is that Doug's story takes people that could have potentially been hopeless and makes them hopeful.
Yes.
And if MedCircle does anything, that drive to know that there's help and you can get better and you can live an incredibly successful life is by far the best theme going.
Absolutely. And one of the first ways to do that is to make sure you get into the right therapist.
Correct.
So my next question is, when you are looking for a therapist, what types of questions should you ask them before you even sit down with them?
So when we're talking specifically about bipolar disorder, it depends on where you are in your cycle as to what type of treatment you're going to get. If you're in an acutely manic phase, you're likely going to end up in a hospital circumstance, maybe. If you're acutely depressed, you may go see a therapist. If you're sort of euthymic or not too disabled, you can get involved in a good therapeutic intervention. The questions that you're going to talk to this individual about are, what is their experience with bipolar disorder? Bipolar disorder is incredibly complex. You really want someone that has experience with this diagnosis and all of the permutations of the diagnosis. So ask them, what's your experience with bipolar? You know, what sort of patient base do you treat? Then what you want to find out is, what sort of modalities do you recommend for bipolar disorder? Because there are many different modalities, and you want to know what this particular person is trained in. And Kyle, we've talked about this before. Psychiatry, psychology, psychotherapy is an incredibly diverse field. It's diverse, and the public needs to know that there are levels of expertise. So know who you're seeing. Is this someone that just took a weekend course in bipolar disorder, or is this someone that has published research on bipolar disorder? There's just that much of a spectrum. So know your provider. Don't be afraid to ask them about their education, where they trained, what their specific interests are, what their specialties are, how many people with bipolar they're treating, what treatment modality they use. I want people to interview a therapist or a psychiatrist the same way that you would interview anyone doing significant work for you, an attorney or an accountant. And in this case, it's more important. This is your life. This is your mental stability, or your family members' mental stability. So interview them.
And you can do this before you even have the first appointment.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want people to really take that home. Don't think you have to pay to get that first session to interview them. You can get this information before you even go sit down.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know what? And I will say something else. And I know it's hard to find a provider, and sometimes people are limited as to who they can see, and they don't have those choices. But if a doctor or a therapist doesn't give you the answers you want to hear, or they put up a fight, you know what? You probably should move on to somebody else, because that's telling you a little something about how the relationship is going to work out.
I'll quote Ariana Grande, thank you, and next.
You
know, we got to keep going here. Okay, so how do you know when you've got the therapist that's such a right fit?
The average is that someone will see about 3 therapists before they settle on one.
Okay.
That's the national average. Unfortunately, with bipolar disorder, there's an enormous amount of misdiagnosis, and people go many, many years without the appropriate diagnosis. The importance with fit is it's going to be unique to each individual. Are you comfortable with your provider? Are you comfortable?
That's so big.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it's true. How do you feel? Do you trust this person? How do you feel when you're in their presence?
Yeah.
Are you calmed? Are you comfortable? Do you trust their judgment? Are they making sense? Do they sound like they understand what you're going through? But again, I've talked to people that like doctors, or that are very matter of fact and very to the point.
That's me. Yep.
But see, that's personal.
That's right.
So it's going to be a different fit for everyone. And the question that I have is, are you comfortable with this provider? Yeah. Then you stick with them.
Some people go, well, I don't want to change. I've been with them for 5 years and I just feel bad. I go, but if you go to the same restaurant and then 5 years later the food sucks, you don't go, well, I've been going here for 5 years, so I'm just going to keep going. You go to a different restaurant.
You're right. And I will encourage this. If someone said to me, Doc, we've been seeing each other for 5 years now. It's a little stagnant. I'd like a second opinion. I'd like to work on something else. I feel like our therapeutic alliance has sort of leveled out. I would say, sure, I understand. You know, maybe I can help you find another provider.
Yeah, very good point.
Maybe I can help you find a provider. Maybe I can collaborate with another provider. A good therapist should not take that personally, is my point.
Agree. How does someone measure the progress they're making in therapy for bipolar disorder?
So what you're going to look at is, especially bipolar disorder, Kyle, especially in bipolar disorder, part of that treatment is keeping a good diary of your moods, like a mood diary. You want to know what's going on throughout the course of the months that you're in treatment. So family members or yourself, or even your therapist, should be monitoring what's going on. And you're going to see some hard data. What's going on with my mood episodes? Am I having more? Am I having less? Am I super depressed? Is this not progressing the way that I thought? And it sounds complex, but that's even another easy question to answer is, are you progressing the way that you want to be? Is your life going the direction that you want? Are you having less episodes? Do you feel better? And I'm not saying after a few days. I'm saying several weeks. If things aren't going right, it's time to revisit the diagnosis, the treatment, and have a significant discussion with that provider.
So as someone who has bipolar disorder, they themselves or a loved one helps them find the right therapist by interviewing them. They go to that first session and they feel good about it afterwards. they've committed 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, on seeing improvement. And if they're seeing improvement over those 2 or 3 weeks, they're likely on a good track.
I would ask them to be patient too.
Yes.
Maybe 2 to 3 weeks might be a little quick.
The patient must be patient.
Yes.
Very good.
There you go. So it's true. Be a little bit patient, especially with mood disorders. They do take time.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is it could be detrimental if you're jumping around to various different therapists too. So you got to be careful with that too. Give it a little bit of time. I would honestly say give it a few months.
Understand.